What is going on, guys? Today I'm going to be doing a music theory lesson in triads. The purpose of today's lesson is to help you get all the way across the guitar neck, thinking of the guitar maybe differently than you've been taught previously. I'm Serge Drobin, and today I am at Fagan's Fretboard Academy here in Tucson, Arizona. If you're interested in lessons, I will have a link in the description below. And now let's dive into today's guitar lesson. So I always like to ask, why is guitar and bass guitar the only two instruments that you don't need to know all of the notes right off the bat? No one really teaches that to you. I know I was never taught all the notes when I first started playing. That was something I had to gather later in my guitar playing career. So today I'm going to help you unlock that and take everything a step further than you might have thought before. So in order to do that, we need to understand chords and triads, okay? So when you play a C chord, you may not have thought of all the notes in this chord, or this one, or this one, or this one, or this one. But we've actually just played the same notes, octaves up, okay? Now, guitar is such a strange instrument because all the strings are tuned to fourths. So it makes it so you have to, kind of understand how pattern-based the layout of this instrument is. And once you understand the patterns and the layout, it's much easier to get around the neck than thinking about individual notes all the time. So, what makes a chord? What makes a chord would be a triad. What is a triad? Well, hence the word tri. It is three notes, and it's three particular notes, okay? It is the first note, the third note, and the fifth note of the scale that you are in. So in this case, we're going to be using C major. So here's my notes of the C major scale. I have C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, B, A, G, F, E, D, C. Okay? So, using all of these notes, we're going to create the triad that I just mentioned, which would be C, E, G. The root note that I'm using for all of these shapes is on the G string. So that's how you can follow this like a straight line, knowing the whole steps and half steps. If I do whole, 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 half, whole, 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 half. Okay, that's my C major scale on one string. Now there is three different ways we can order a triad. The original, I like to call this the original, or this would be the first way to do it, would just be like it comes, C, E, G, which would look like this, C, E, and G, just like that, okay? Now remember this because this is a shape, okay? Once you know this major shape, it makes a major sound. In this case, it's a C major chord. Once you know this shape, you can move it all up and down the neck on these same three strings wherever you want. It works anywhere, as long as you know the context that you're using it in, of course. So, now we're going to outline the chords of the C major scale, okay? And all of the chords, or triads, I should say, that I'm going to do are all going to be the first scale tone, the third, and the fifth in that order. So it goes 1, 3, 5. You want to understand the lingo of numbers when you're doing music because the numbers are actually much easier to remember and understand than the letters themselves. So we can remember this is 1, 3, 5. 1, 3, 5 on these three strings in this shape is the same for any key I decide to go in, even if I were to go chromatically up the neck. It never changes, okay? So this is 1, 3, 5, major. Now let's go to D, which would be the second chord of C major, which would be D minor. By default, we just use the scale tones. We start on D and go up in thirds. In this case, it would be D, F, A, and that naturally makes a D minor chord. So here's what that looks like, or a D minor triad, same thing. We have D, F, A. Now remember, this is a minor shape, okay? So I can take this anywhere up the neck, and it's still a minor shape. It's always 1, 3, 5, minor, okay? So in this case, now we have C major and D minor. So remember these two shapes because they're going to get you around the rest of the scale. So I'm going C major, I have D minor, D, F, A. Now look at this, I'm just going to go up a whole step to my next root note on the G string. Same minor shape, E minor. Then I go up a half step to that major shape again, F major. Okay, again, outlining my notes. Okay, then I go to the G major chord. Okay, then and this is the same shape, right? Repeating the shapes. Now I just go back to my minor shape. Okay, A minor chord. Now here's the one where it's going to change, which would be the diminished shape. In this case, it would be B, D, F in this order. So we have B, D, F. B, D, F. Okay, this is a diminished shape. You probably recognize it from a diminished arpeggio if you heard it. It's a pretty unique sound. You can't miss it. And then we go back to C. Okay, so these are all 1, 3, 5 shapes. So remember, think of them as numbers now. You don't have to remember the letters so much as long as you can remember how to play the shapes and know that they are 1, 3, 5 shapes. Think of them like that. This is a shape of 1, 3, 5 utilizing the top 3 strings. So here's C, 1, 3, 5. B diminished, 1, 3, 5. A minor, 1, 3, 5. G major, 1, 3, 5. F major, 1, 3, 5. E minor, 1, 3, 5. D minor, 1, 3, 5. And C major, 1, 3, 5. All right, so let's talk about the other 2 ways that I can formulate a chord. So we have 1, 3, 5, and let's go back to the C chord now. So we have 1, 3, 5. So what's my next shape of a C major chord? Well, naturally, if we're going to go up in this direction here, we're going to take the 5th note, in this case it's G, and we're just going to put it on top of the chord. So this would be actually an inversion of C. It would be 5, 3, 1 now. That's how you can think of it. That's 5, 3, 1, or G, E, C, okay? So that, again, is a major shape. This applies anywhere on the guitar. And then let's go to our minor shape. So again, now I'm going to use this same G string note, okay? I'm going to use the same G string note as a root note, and I'm going to go up a whole step again. But instead of this shape, which was the minor shape, I'm going to take this top note as well and put it on the bottom now. So now I have 5, 3, 1 in the minor shape. Okay, so this would be A, D, F. Initially we had D, F, A. Now we have A, D, F. It is that simple. So as long as you can remember that shape, now you know everything on these group of 3 strings, being the D, G, and B string. All right, so here's major 1. Here is our major 1 chord, which is 5, 1, 3. Here's our minor 2 chord, still 5, 1, 3. Here's our minor 3 chord, still 5, 1, 3. And it's going to go so on and so forth. Here's the 4 major chord, the 5 major chord, the 6 minor chord. Now the 7 diminished chord. Look, I'm going to take that note here, which is an F, and I'm just going to put it right on the bottom right there on the D string. Okay, there's our triad. Now we still have 5, 1, 3 here. Okay, then I'm going to play it all backwards just to make sure I really know it. All right, let's do the last inversion. There's only, like I said, there's only 3 ways you can do triad. So here's the last way we can do it. This would be 3, 5, 1. So in this case, we took the 3rd note of the scale, which was initially on the B string. Okay, that was an E note. We moved it to the A string. So now we have these group of 3 strings here being the A, D, and G string being utilized. And now we have 3, 5, 1, which is E, G, C. It's still a C chord, it's just stacked in a different order. Okay, now we're going to make our D minor chord. So again, let's go to this previous inversion here, which was 5, 1, 3. Okay, so now we're going to take this note, which is an F, okay? And we're going to put it on the bottom. Here is 3, 5, 1 now. Here is 3, 5, 1 as a D minor chord. So now we have F, A, D. That's our stack, okay? So now here's our 2 shapes again. If you can remember those 2 shapes, you know most of the scale, and then once we get to diminished, I'll show you that. So again, now we are still, keep in mind, we are still using the G string here as our root note. So that has not changed this whole time. Here's our C major scale one more time for your reference. All right, this has not changed at all. We're still using the G string as our root note. So here's C on this root note right here. Here's my last inversion that I'm going to do, which is 3-5-1, E, G, C. All right, that's the 1 major chord. Here's the 2 minor chord, F, A, D, still 3-5-1. All right, let's go to the 3 minor chord. Let's go to the 4 major chord, the 5 major chord, the 6 minor chord. All right, now here is our crazy diminished chord. So let's take this note again. Here's the previous inversion we did on the last one. So here's our previous inversion that we did on the last one, which was a B diminished. Now we're going to take that top note and we're going to move it down to right here. Okay, that note is just like this was a D note. Here's a D note down here that we're going to put on that. So we went from this to this now with D on the bottom, which is 3-5-1. With B on the top, still on the G string, B diminished in the last inversion. And then we're back to the 1 chord. Okay, so I'll play that backwards as well. Okay, those are all 3 of your inversions in triad form, all the different orders you can do them in, utilizing just the G string to get around, and you can easily find all of these inversions once you memorize the patterns and what they look like, and you can move them anywhere you want around the neck. In this case, we did them in the form of a C major scale in chords, and if you know your whole step, half step formula, which is whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half for all major scales, you can get around with all these inversions really nicely. And this is how a lot of people actually use shell voicings to make stuff in jazz music. They use a lot of these kind of triads we just did. That's a lot of what you're hearing when you're listening to guitar on jazz tracks, because they're usually not doing the full chords because sometimes they're too big, especially if you have a keyboard player and you're trying to fit into the mix more. You might use a 3-note triad instead of a full stacked chord like that, okay? So, I hope this helped you a lot today, understanding the neck of the guitar a lot better. I will do another video on how to use this with lead guitar playing. If you haven't already checked out my video on arpeggios, make sure to check that one out. I'll put a link for that, and that'll also really help you understand this stuff much better and getting around the guitar neck. If you are interested in deep dive guitar talks like this one, I really appreciate you liking the video and your subscription, of course. Thank you very much for watching. I hope this helped you a lot today, and I'll see you on the next one.